Welcome to the Spiritual Counseling TV Network. My name is Christie Ramirez and I'm your soul coach. In today's couples therapy talk show, we are going to continue on last week's theme, which was, is couples therapy for me? Because I know that a lot of couples are adamant about seeking therapy and not knowing whether it's worth it, right? Worth the investment, the time, the effort, and even the money, to be honest. So I started off last week's podcast show with, all of that research, but we're gonna go and continue because it was just about to get good, but the time limit already was there. I don't want to keep these more than an hour per week. So we're gonna continue to expand on last week's theme. And it's interesting because we left off with telling the difference between what is truth and what is a myth, right? When it comes to couples, happy couples, what determines a happy relationship and it lasting, right? A marriage, and what are actually some culprits that will create dysfunction in a partnership. So we actually left off on this popular myth and hypothesis that actually is not true. Poor problem-solving skills are dysfunctional. Now, although research suggests that this hypothesis is essentially wrong, the role of problem solving has actually been exaggerated in marital therapy. Even in the best marriages, while some minor fraction of marital problems don't get solved, over time, most marital problems do not get solved at all, right? And I think we did mention this last time, that there are certain perpetual problems that it's okay to have in your relationship. For example, let's say, there's an issue with mother or father-in-law. Those are things that you can't control, right? And it's dependent on exterior outside of the relationship. So the question would be how much you value your relationship in spite of others perhaps not approving of it, right? And how genuine the relationship really is. So this is a situation where it's definitely worth going to couples therapy, because there are ways of solving this and talking it out and shifting the mindset and perspective about it, right? Another influential aspect and hypothesis for today is that mind reading is dysfunctional. Now, mind reading isn't attributing thoughts and feelings or motives to the other person, right? It's assuming, basically. Instead of asking what your partner's feeling, people mind read and assume that they know what their partner is thinking and feeling. And this is dysfunctional, right? Because this is creating just a bad judgment call on your partner unnecessarily. And nobody wants to be judged or even attacked per se, right? So for this reason, concepts like feedback mechanisms are so appealing. The assumption was that if people could give one another feedback, then communication would become clear and pathology would just vanish. This is a very good idea. Unfortunately, it's just not true. So in ailing marriages, people generally communicate very clearly. But what they communicate is mostly negative. So I do feel like we mentioned this last time. But this is about what you're communicating, right? Because if you're communicating something negative in a graceful manner, it's still going to be taken off as hurtful, right? That's a little bit even manipulative, to be honest, and emotionally abusive. But if what you're saying is in a positive manner, but what you're trying to say is still kind of negative, like harshly judging or criticizing your partner, then that's still going to hurt the partner. And that's not a great way of communicating. So this hypothesis came from the fact that early systems therapists worked primarily with very disturbed families. So that was like their only case scenarios that they had, which is why they came with that conclusion. Now recall that family therapy was initially proposed as the cause and cure for individual psychopathology. It's also only recently that its goals have changed to improving family relationships, and family therapy and marriage therapy are relatively new branches of psychology. Probably the only consistent finding to emerge from studies of interactions in families with severe psychopathology was that the communication in these families was unclear, confusing, and hard to follow. Hence, it was natural to suggest that if one could provide feedback loops that could clarify messages and discrepancies in their component parts, a cure could be achieved. Unfortunately, in distressed marriages, the communication is often quite clear and quite hostile. So improved clarity does little to help with distressed couples, because that would just make it even worse, don't you think? So people do indeed mind read a lot of marriages, and this is according to Gottman. Instead of saying, how do you feel at my mother's house? The statement is made, you hate going to my mother's house. And now that's just going to the wrong conclusion. And that's because they usually already know, right? Partners usually feel each other. So it isn't usually bad communication, it's actually real knowledge. It's just communicated in a harsh manner. And actually, whether mind reading is dysfunctional or not depends entirely on the affect with which it is delivered. Mind reading with positive affect acts as a feeling probe. It is the major way that people in marriages generally ask about feelings.